Good morning, everybody. Good morning, whoever's online as well. Welcome to this session. This is going to be a very interesting session, which is entitled Going Digital, Building Effective Dispute Resolution, Collective Bargaining and Social Dialogue on Digital Platforms. And our speaker is Mr. Desmond Odhiambo from Cliffe Dekker Hofmeyr of Kenya. Mr. Desmond Odhiambo is a partner in the dispute resolution, employment law, as well as business rescue, restructuring and insolvency practice areas. He has over 12 years experience providing dispute resolution, risk advisory and regulatory services to clients in Kenya and other African jurisdictions. The complete biography of Mr. Odhiambo can be found on the link that has been sent to you previously. Let's head start. Mr. Odhiambo will be presenting between 11 to 11:30, and then we will be giving you 10 minutes for question and answers. And whoever is online, please feel free to put your questions on the platform. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Odhiambo.
Okay, yes, thank you for that introduction. So my topic that I would like us to discuss this morning is, as already introduced, is going digital, building effective dispute resolution, collective bargaining, and social dialogue on digital platforms. So perhaps just to begin, I'll begin with just some simple definitions, which will just put into context what the topic is about. So social dialogue, when we talk about social dialogue, we refer to discussions, consultations, negotiations, and joint actions involving organizations representing the two sides of an industry. So you have the employer on the one hand, and then you have the employee on the other hand. The employee could also be represented by a trade union or such other committee or worker representation. Dispute resolution, I'm sure most of you are familiar with what dispute resolution means, but it's still important to define it so that we understand the objective. So the objective of dispute resolution is just to settle a contentious matter between parties, to settle differences. Inevitably, where you have two or more people gathered together to achieve a task, differences will arise. So the question really is, how do you resolve those differences? And then the third term that I would like to define, that I'll be using throughout my presentation, is digitalization. And what digitalization means is the use of technology to enhance and transform existing processes. So if we may begin with an overview of what social dialogue, an overview of social dialogue. So social dialogue at its most basic form requires at least two parties. So you have the employer on the one hand, and you have the employee on the other hand. And social dialogue may one form of social dialogue is collective bargaining, where the parties are discussing terms and conditions for work, usually around working hours and the basic minimum wages and such other benefits. Social dialogue, although it extends to other areas, and to other areas, for instance, protection of employees from harassment and other rights that employees have. It also includes civic education, and in the context of the world that we live in, the world of work that we live in now, we find that it is changing rapidly, and the digitalization has changed how we carry out our work. So the important thing now for employers to consider is, how are they preparing their employees to be better prepared for this digital era, and to minimize the effects of the digital era on their jobs. So at its basic form, it requires at least two parties, but a more effective form of social dialogue is a multi-party or a tripartite form. And this is where you now rope in the government as an interested party in the discussions. In some cases, you can also rope in the civil society as an interested party in the discussions. And the reason for this is because the government and the civil society will be looking after the interests of the community. So they are not just looking at, they're looking at the impact of the discussions beyond the direct parties, that is the employer and the employee, and seeing what needs to be done to help the community. And we will see examples of how the government and civil society can play a role in social dialogue. So the importance of social dialogue is one of it is that it is vital to achieve the SDG 8, which is a decent work and economic growth as part of the sustainable development goals that we intend to achieve in various nations. So social dialogue is crucial to be able to achieve that. And social dialogue is also an important instrument for sound governance because it improves the policy design quality and recovery strategies because of the information sharing that goes on in the process. Social dialogue also builds trust in and commitment to policies. It is one thing for an organization to come up with a policy, for instance, a social media policy, but it is another thing for that policy to be implemented in the organization. The employees have to buy in to that policy. So the only method to achieve that buy-in from the employees is through social dialogue. Social dialogue also helps to resolve differences. Before you go into litigation, it is important that a supervisor and an employee can be able to resolve differences in how they work. And resolving those differences at its very basic form is just having a discussion about it and seeing how do you achieve a meeting of the minds. Now, examples of how social dialogue can be used to resolve some of the sticky situations that we encounter in the world of work today. One of them is on the digital work platforms. So the platform workers, and by platform workers, I refer to the workers of Glovo, Uber, Bolt, who in many jurisdictions are regarded as independent contractors. So for some of these workers, you find that they are struggling to find a platform to air their concerns and their complaints. And because they are regarded as independent contractors, there's little attention that is being paid to them by third parties. So other than their direct employer, so to speak, the national government or the civil society really has not weighed in to address their concerns. But there's a huge opportunity for social dialogue to be used to address the complaints that they have and to prevent the frequent strikes that you encounter with some of these workers on the social platform. And the reason for this is because the civil society and the national government, if they do engage in this dialogue, then you are likely to have long-term solutions, that would safeguard the economy, and that would also protect the platform workers.
Desmond, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, I am not sure whether your presentation is meant to be only on the first page, or because so far we are seeing only your first slide.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm in my fifth slide.
No problem.
Okay, let me just try and resolve that. Sorry, just 1 minute. Thank you for pointing out that out. Are you able to see?
Now we're seeing all your side. I think just keep it like this, and then we can.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm happy to share the slides after this. Sorry about that.
No problem. Good.
Yes. So as I was discussing that social dialogue has been used in other jurisdictions, for instance, in Europe, to resolve some of the issues that face platform workers and the digital workers. A good case in point is in the UK, where the Uber drivers were able to organize themselves into an association and were able to advocate for better terms for themselves, and were able also to advocate for knowledge sharing, for better knowledge sharing, so that they are able to understand whether what they are receiving in return is a fair share. So there's a lot of opportunity for social dialogue to be used in Africa, for the digital platform workers in Africa. And there's an opportunity for governments and the civil society to be involved, so that it becomes a tripartite discussion for the betterment of the economy and to protect this platform workers. Now, there are certain elements that must be present for an effective social dialogue. So one element that we've already discussed is that it should be tripartite or tripartite plus. When you talk about tripartite plus, it means that the civil society is also involved. The other element is information exchange. And the reason why we are looking at these elements is so that we can be able to analyze, is there opportunity for social dialogue to be undertaken on digital platforms? So information exchange is crucial. And then there has to be continuous engagement for social dialogue to be effective. Continuous engagement between the employer and the employee. And so we'll be looking to see whether the digital platforms provide opportunities for continuous engagement. And then the other fourth key element of social dialogue is also dispute resolution. So social dialogue on online platforms, there are various opportunities that are available to carry out social dialogue on digital platforms. And some of these tools are, for instance, websites where the trade unions can publish information about their activities, what it is they do. so that people who are interested in joining the trade union can easily get that information. They could also publish information about what are the basic, working conditions and rights that workers in a particular sector are entitled to. So it's a useful tool for knowledge sharing, and which is one of the elements that we identified is critical to enable social dialogue. Then emails, which we have already been using for quite some time now. Then we have online newsletters. There are blogs for purposes of information sharing. And then we have online surveys. So this one is particularly useful to find out what the issues employees are facing. So trade unions or worker representative groups or even employers can carry out an online survey just to find out the issues employees are facing and how widespread it is, so that they can be able to address it. Then social media is useful for mobilization. Of members of a trade union, and especially platforms such as WhatsApp has proved very useful for trade unions when mobilizing their members, either to attend a meeting or to participate in a certain action, and even in an industrial action. Then virtual platforms for purposes of carrying out meetings. So, for instance, the Zoom Teams that we've now become accustomed to since COVID. So those are some of the tools that are available. And how these tools are used. So one of the ways in which the tools are used is, for instance, to provide training. It has become apparent that it is not enough just to agitate for better working conditions. Employees also have to be empowered to be able to participate in this digital era of work. And so the digital tools are very useful in providing training and upskilling employees around their busy schedules. And then they've also been used in recruiting of members. So like the WhatsApp platforms are very useful in recruiting members. It has also been used as a means of guidance, advice, and counseling, information published on their blogs or their websites. Then they're also useful in optimizing the administrative processes. So trade unions are able to optimize their registrations, so that they now spend more time in doing activities that have real benefits to the workers that they represent. So for instance, they can devote more time to training or devote more time to meeting their stakeholders. Electronic voting and online protests is also available on the digital platform, collecting member views, as we have discussed, through the surveys, virtual meetings, and information sharing. So in looking at what opportunities are available on the digital forms, it looks like the digital platform provides an immense opportunity to be able to do almost everything that we are used to doing face to face. Although that notwithstanding, what we are seeing now post-COVID is that there's still a place for face-to-face negotiations. People are used to seeing or prefer to interact with each other face-to-face, notwithstanding the conveniences that you get on the digital platform. And this is because, when it comes to, for instance, collective bargaining, it is easier to interpret body language, to engage in meetings on the side to discuss, sticking points, in a breakout room, or even to test potential compromises, in those side meetings. So we can't entirely replace face-to-face negotiations. What has been observed is that, especially in Europe, where there's been a lot of they've really, explored social dialogue on digital platforms. They have observed that the digital platforms are useful where there is already a rapport, between the trade union and the employer. But if it is a first-time meeting, or you are discussing, you're meeting for the first time, maybe because the trade union has just recently been recognized, or you are meeting for the first time to discuss an amendment to the collective bargaining agreement, then the first meetings, they have discovered that it's useful to have them face-to-face. And then follow-up meetings can be done digitally. Digital platforms, of course, are convenient for the busy executives and also for global HR directors who may not be within the same jurisdiction. So it will still play a crucial role in the form of social dialogue. So what we envision going forward is a hybrid system where you have both the face-to-face and the digital. The digital platforms, depending on what's appropriate for that particular instance. Then, what are some of the barriers to digitalization of the social dialogue? So, the barriers to digitalization in Africa, one is, the low digital literacy. So if you look at apart from the knowledge workers, the other workers have low digital literacy levels because they do not interact, for instance, with computers on a day-to-day basis in carrying out their activities. So to be able to use some of those tools, it would require, the employer to upskill them so that they can be able to use those tools. And then there is also a lack of or unstable access to electricity, which affects the smooth progress of meetings. If you are, for instance, you have to carry out a virtual meeting and you have unstable power, then that would become a barrier to digitalization of that social dialogue. And then poor technology and network infrastructure. So you find that we still have room to improve the digital infrastructure in many African countries. Some, of course, the digital penetration is higher than others, but there's still room for improvement. And then the other barrier is high internet costs, is also another barrier. And then there's a low proliferation of digital technologies. You find that in many African countries, so smartphones are still not widely used for some sections of the workers. They only have a basic phone, which you can, the form of communication that you can use on it is the basic, SSD communication, and so they do not have the internet tools, that can be used to carry out social dialogue effectively. So that is also a limiting factor. Then, when it comes to dispute resolution, So there's also been efforts to digitalize the process of dispute resolution. And in Africa, it has been in two forms. One is the use of virtual courts, and secondly, it's the use of e-filing systems. Now, the use of the e-filing systems, some countries had already put up a strategy even before the onset of COVID. And what COVID did was merely to accelerate the process, so as to minimize the number of filing clerks that would come into the registry to carry out, to file their documents. And as at 2021, the number of African countries, and this is courtesy of the Lawyers Hub that did a survey, as at 8th of February 2021, the number of countries that had adopted virtual courts, the ones shaded in blue. So for instance, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, DRC, Congo. So quite a number of countries quickly adopted the use of virtual courts. And so they were carrying out their proceedings through the Microsoft Teams or Zoom platforms. Then the number of African countries that adopted e-services as at 8th February 2021 is now shaded in brown. So you can see quite a number of countries, adopted e-services for their digitalization of their services. So for instance, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, DRC, Congo, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Botswana. So quite a number of countries were quick also to implement e-services. So the barriers for digitalization is just as the same as I had discussed before for social dialogue. Maybe one that I can dwell on a little bit is on the poor technology and network infrastructure. So in many rural setups, you find that the level of digital infrastructure is not to the same degree as in the urban centers. So that limits the parties in terms of access to the virtual courts. So you'd find that the parties then have to resort to going to their advocates' offices to be able to access the virtual courts. Ways to mitigate these barriers, to require tripartite solutions. So in private sector, the national government will have to be involved to mitigate this barriers. So one is to invest in off-grid electricity alternatives, so that there is consistent power supply. We also employers have to invest in collaboration and innovation around technology. And then one of the other things to do is also to create accessible digital spaces. So for instance, having community centers where people can be able to come in and access a virtual court, with the assistance of a technical person, so that they are able to access their justice. They're able to access justice rather. Then the other thing is also to roll out digital literacy programs and trainings. So we can, this can be a concerted effort just to provide digital literacy classes, so that people have the ability and the skill to be able to use them, and just to promote digital skills development for the workers, as part of the efforts of upskilling them. So this is something that trade unions can take up. So it is not just a question of campaigning for better terms, but they can also take up the mantle of upskilling their stakeholders. Yeah, and I think that I think my time is up, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. I welcome any questions from the floor.
Thank you very much, Desmond. That was really interesting indeed, and I think our audience has quite a few questions already for you. I don't. Let me just check whether we have anything online as well. Okay, so I think we have a question for you.
Thank you for the insightful presentation, sir. Mine was just for you to kindly touch on the e-services, the e-filing systems that you touched on your presentations, just for better clarity. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. I'm happy to do that. So the e-filing systems that I mentioned is it's an electronic so it's more than an electronic database. So one, yes, it is a database where you find that let me use Kenya for example, where you find that the first step that the judiciary did was to transition the physical records onto a digital platform. So what they did is that they took the court files and scanned them, the physical court files, and scanned the documents onto a platform. And the reason for doing that was so that there could be easier storage and transmission of those documents, and so that you avoid the situations where files are being lost. And when a file gets lost, then you have to, it delays the process of a case actually being heard, because you first have to apply for reconstruction of the file, which means each advocate has to submit their documents to the court afresh and so forth. So that was the first step. Then the next step that they did was now to provide a platform where you could file electronically. So instead of a filing clerk going to the courtroom, you simply upload your documents onto a platform from your office. You upload the documents, and then it is assessed on that platform how much filing fees you have to pay, and then you pay for the filing fees through through a mobile money app. And once you pay, then the file, a file is opened up, and therefore, and also once you file, it also provides a provision where that document is also served on your counterparty. So that use of technology to do that administrative task has many benefits. So for instance, it has speeded. It has helped that process to be done more quickly and more efficiently, because your papers do not get lost in the process. And then there is also security of the documents, and because of that e-filing system, it also became easier for the judges to be able to conduct their courtroom even from their own houses, because all they need to do is to log in to the e-filing platform and access the file, and they're able to see the documents that have been filed. So that is the e-filing platform that I was referring to, in terms of just speeding up the administrative process. So it's not just simply a database, but you are, in terms of in terms of access, and in terms of the actual filing and transmission of documents, it is done electronically instead of use of paper. And it has tremendous advantages for us. I could speak so, especially in Kenya, you find that even the number of filing clerks that you now need in your office, you do not need 4 of them. You just need 1 who can be able to upload them on the system. So there are those savings. Yeah, I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I think we have one online question for you, Desmond. So I'll read it out. What are some of the pros and cons for digital dispute resolution, apart from the challenges of accessibility? And in your view, do the pros outweigh the cons?
Okay. I think in terms of the pros for digital dispute resolution, if we look at, for instance, the virtual courts, the one obvious advantage is that there's flexibility that is provided to the parties, so you do not have to spend so much time in travel, to access a physical courtroom to be able to conduct your case. And then it also saves a lot of time. So you find that, for instance, in a typical cause list for a labor judge, 60% of it is administrative issues, where you are just allocating dates, or you are hearing interim applications and so forth. So those things can be done in a virtual platform without the need of getting all the parties to come to the courtroom, and then you leave the courtroom for just the main hearings. And so the limitation of the digital platform, and which is now speaks of the con, is that for the digital platform, I think conducting a full hearing is a challenge, because the face-to-face interaction with a witness, with a judge, is something that you cannot easily replace. And as an advocate, you want to be able to tell subtle differences in expression of a witness, during cross-examination, or you want to be able to read the mood of the judge when you're maybe pressing on a particular point. So for full hearing, I think the face-to-face is still the preferred mode, but there are certainly opportunities to save time on other forms. And other forms of dispute resolutions, which you don't necessarily need the witnesses to be present.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one last question.
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm from Zimbabwe, where we already started the e-filing system. However, I find it, especially in labor cases, very difficult for the ordinary worker, because the history of labor courts is that they should be user-friendly, even to the ordinary worker. Let's take, for simplicity's sake, a sweeper, a gardener, a headsman, and things like that should be able to go and tell his story to the judge. And with this technology now, yes, he will be assisted to file his papers, but still there are issues of language barriers across the African countries where the platform is in English. That's my first question. How do you think those people can be helped? My second question is that because countries have introduced regulations that guide e-filing, what it means is that internal disciplinary hearings, documentation and processes should be modified to talk to e-filing, so that when they get to the e-filing stage, all the papers can easily be uploaded. A good example is that almost all e-filing systems will say if a document is done in the local language, it has to be translated to English, and there is a font size that is prescribed. How best can internal hearings be restructured to talk to e-filing? Those are my two questions.
Okay. Let me begin with your first one. So like in terms of the ease of access, you have a valid point when you say that, for labor courts, they are not like your commercial courts. It's a court where, an ordinary worker can represent himself, and the systems should be able to encourage people to access justice and people to be able to file documents with ease and so forth. So I think it will have to be a concerted effort to have centers where ordinary citizens, or to even have to even still have a place even within the court precincts, where those who are not able to file their documents from their home or from a cyber cafe, can still be attended to by somebody at the court registry to assist them in filing their documents, but still using the e-filing platform. So it will have to be a gradual process, just like the way we have done e-filing approaches for for other things, like even for the for the revenue authorities, where for instance in Kenya you file your returns in an e-platform, and if you're not able to do that, there are cyber cafes where people now have the knowledge on how to do that, and they can do it on your behalf. So it will be a concerted effort to provide those facilities and also to enhance digital literacy. Then for language, I think we have to find a way probably to provide interpreters so that those who are not able to communicate in the official language of the court can still be able to address their case and still get the justice they require. So I think it will be something that the judiciary has to look into, to have standby interpreters, so that no time is wasted and people are able to access justice as quickly and as efficiently as possible. In terms of the internal documents, like the disciplinary hearings and so forth, I think for that one, we have to look, and I do not have an answer for that one, how we can, for instance, put the storage of documents electronically. But I think we have to look for a way to do it, so that if the matter escalates to a court, then you are not now scrambling to look for handwritten notes of a disciplinary hearing or a disciplinary meeting, but the same is available electronically. So I think that one we'll have to give more thought into it. Sorry, I do not have an answer for that, but it's a valid question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think your time is up in any case.
Yes.
Thank you very much for this presentation, and please do send us the slides, because they were very interesting, so that they can be shared with the rest of the participants. Thank you.
Certainly. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning to all who is online as well. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is going to be a very interesting session. Our session is entitled Redefining Economics, Reconstructing Economies, and Recreating Wealth in the Fourth Cyber Industrial Revolutionary Workplace in Africa. And our speaker today is Dr. Oluwole Popoola. Dr. Oluwole Popoola holds the following qualifications, which is amongst others an LLD cyber law, LLM cyber and intellectual property law, WIPO intellectual property law certificate. You can find the whole of the biography of Dr. Popoola on the link which has been shared with you. And without further ado, I'll leave the floor to Dr. Popoola for this interesting session.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. First and foremost, let me correct the title, which I had to change due to time factor that couldn't cover the broader perspective to the issue, which is about Africa. I had to limit myself to South Africa that I have more information about. So that's the title that I've rephrased, which is Redefining Economies, Restructuring Economy and Recreating Wealth in the Fourth Cyber Industrial Revolutionary Workplaces in South Africa, not in Africa. So, so the fact that I'm making this presentation from South Africa and not in Mauritius, it tells us that some income must have been lost to the aviation industry and to the accommodation sector too, which is a demonstration of the issue that I'm going to be dealing with. And the key question is about, given the benefits of increasing automation. I hope you're able to see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Yes, I have a challenge in doing automated slides. I don't know whether I could try it and see whether it will work. And we see the question that I'm raising here, just to confirm from you.
Sorry, we can see your slide, and what's on the screen is your fourth slide for the moment.
The fourth slide. Oh,
yeah.
Good. Then thank you. Then, so the question that I'm going to the key question is about addressing the consequences of this equilibrium between the supply and demand of skilled labor in business automation in the workplace in South Africa. And by that, I mean that automation has made some employees redundant, irrelevant, and in some cases, they have lost their jobs. So what do we do in this situation? So I'm going to go through some software applications that have been applied globally, which I will not emphasize on, but in all sectors, I'm aware that automation has taken over the business operation on a daily basis or routine basis. So these are some of the various sectors that I've identified in accounting, in administration, governance, and service delivery. In agriculture too, we shouldn't be surprised about that. Alternative dispute management, like my colleague just mentioned now, automation is also being used. Aviation, very soon we are going to have pilotless aircraft. Banking, fintech, broadcasting, e-commerce that we are all very familiar with. Criminal law, also there are several software applications and hardware devices that have taken over business operations. Driving, education, entrepreneurship, estate, freedom of expression, social business, media, that we call social media, but it is, in my view, called social business media because it's not only meant for social interaction. People now use it for various business opportunities. Gambling and games, health, operation and production, including transition, transport, warfare. Warfare, in that regard, I think I need to mention the fact that automation has been increasing in all spheres, but the moment the inventors got to the area of using robotics to fight wars, a global village has now come to the conclusion that the invention of some devices should be regulated. So that is the only area that I know that automation is being controlled or regulated. But in other areas, we've seen it all over that they are increasing on a daily basis. However, some do not believe in the fact that automation has adversely impacted on business operation. And the views of McKinsey, they are there for us to see. Forest estimate is also there for us to see. But there are so many proponents of the fact that automation has had some impact on employment in South Africa. Amongst them is the 2014 Davos meeting, where they've given more information about that. We can see the statistics that are available to demonstrate the fact that automation in the business environment is adversely affecting or impacting on employment in South Africa, which we call technological unemployment, because of inadequate skilled labor to match the demand for the labor by the employers who are interested in ensuring that productivity is increased, profit is also increasing, So these are the real reasons that employers use the various automated devices. But I will emphasize on some of them. In the 2017 McKinsey report, it's reported that, I'm sorry, but the screen is covering my, sorry. Oh, sorry. It's reported that out of 749 billion working hours per year, 417 billion hours are already automated, right? And that tells us that it's more than half of the working hours per year that have been automated. And what is the impact in the various levels of skill? We have more impact in the low-level skilled areas, while the middle skilled areas have minimal impact, and the least impact is found in the high skilled areas, where the skilled employees have not felt the impact so much. But how many of the people or the workforce in South Africa, how many of them do have skilled, have the skills to be relevant in the system? So that is an issue for us to consider. So again, out of the, sorry, I don't know the slides.
For the moment,
So
it's slide 4.
Is this slide 4?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to go back to. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Let me end the show so that we can see. I'm sorry about it. I think it's better this way. This way, because I tested it earlier, it was giving me the same problem. Sorry about it. Can we see where I am? Slide 24.
24, yeah. Now 24 is
Yes,
showing. Yeah, okay.
Yes, I'm sorry that we couldn't see the various statistics. That
No problem. But please make sure to send it to us afterwards so that we can circulate it.
I will definitely do that.
Thank you.
I will do that. Okay. So I was saying that out of that 700 out of 749 billion working hours per year, 478 billion hours are already automated, and the impact in various categories of skill differs from one another. The low-skilled employees are more impacted than the high-skilled employees. So that is very important for us. Then out of between 400 million, between 400 million to 800 million jobs could be lost due to robotic automation by 2030. That's an information by a 2017 McKinsey Global Institute report. And in my conceptualization, I've been able to categorize automation into 3 categories, namely the transitory period, which is where we are. The second one is the almost absolute automation rather. And the third one, which is absolute automation, which we may not witness based on the age that some of us are in now. It will be later, but it is very important for us to understand these various concepts. Now, we need to apply the law in South Africa under Section 189 of the Labor Relations Act. The application will ask the question before an employer will be allowed. And we've seen it all over in the retail shops. We go to various retail shops and we see around that what do the tellers do that we cannot do. Since we all have access to ATM, we have greater risk at the ATM, withdrawing huge sums of money and depositing huge sums of money. So what then stops the employer from automating the retail store? But we know that should that happen, it's going to be a war in the country. But before an employer does that, before an employer embarks on using an automated system in the business operation, they have to consider the following factors. One is to attempt to reach consensus on the core reason for operational requirement. There must be a consensus, an attempt. In any case, that's what Section 189 says. There must also be an attempt to reach consensus on the appropriate measures. What are the measures? First measure is to consider how to avoid dismissals. Second one is to look into how to minimize the number of dismissals. The third one is to change the timing of dismissals. Fourth one is to mitigate the adverse effects. And the third condition here is to attempt to reach consensus on the method for selecting the employees for dismissal. How do you select the employees? Do we rely on the LIFO or FIFO or LIFO? FILO rather, FILO, FIFO or LIFO. I mean, but it should be a combination of all these factors that will enable a balanced employee population in the office environment. Another condition is to attempt to reach consensus on severance pay. This will also be subject to how much finances that the employer can afford to part away with. So there must be an issuance of written notice. We know all these things. Various conditions are required that an employer must comply with. So in the long run, the court has taken a decision that the reason for automation must be comprehensively scrutinized and considering the commercial rationality and business reasoning and decision-making process, which under Section 213 of the Labor Relations Act are very important, whether it is based on economic reason or technological reason or structural reason or similar reasons. Must be able to, an employer should be able to do that, but an employer should consider all these factors. So in the labor economics, we have to consider also the macroeconomic implication, whether it is a narrow perspective or it is a broad perspective, which is the macroeconomic issues that must be considered in embarking on operational requirements to embark on automation. So what are the causes of this equilibrium in the demand and supply? Like I said earlier on, there is inadequate supply of skill in automated areas. And what automation is doing is to take away employees, ordinary employees, as middlemen. I see them as middlemen because using ATM as an example, you do not need an employee of a bank to assist you. You just go there. So the employee is cut out. Who are the ones that are relevant or productive? They are the ones that have the relevant skill in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which unfortunately we don't have good record. 30% is the pass mark in mathematics and some other areas. And as I yesterday, the Center for Development and Enterprise gave a report, which is contested by the Department of Education, that when South Africans go for global competition, they almost come last. It seems they are the lowest performers in such programs. So that is a concern for everybody that we have, based on the history that we have in South African education system in the past. So it becomes worrisome. So what are the consequences? Like I said earlier on, employees will become more irrelevant, redundant, and they may lose their jobs, because they are just mere end users. They do not add to the productive system. If they did not add to the productive system, then they are not relevant at all. So other consequences will be that there's mass labor disputes, and Zolin Zimbabwe once said it not too long ago, that we are sitting on a time-ticking bomb that will explode should the government not address the various issues that are affecting the labor force. So these are the various consequences that we have when there is a disequilibrium. Now, my emphasis is on this new theory that I've come up with. We've had scholars speak about cyberism, which talks about the social benefits of information technology. That's just the summary of the definition. So in my view, it is an inadequate definition, and it doesn't cover the scope of the development that we have now. So I have 4 components, amongst others, because I've limited myself to these 4 areas. Other researchers may proceed beyond that to look into the financial aspect of the present situation. But the first area that I'm focusing on is about the national legal framework on the formulation and implementation of a policy on relevant cyber economic driven dual education and skill development and pragmatic pedagogies in science, technology, engineering, and maths. And the other aspect that is new, which is not new in any case, but I feel I'm of the view, having interacted with the IT guys for some time, I realized that they do not have adequate information about social sciences, humanities, arts, and management in enabling them to have a well configured system. So we both need this knowledge. And the question will be, how do people like who were born before now, or even those who were born after us, they are not involved in mathematics. In most cases, you find math literacy is the subject that they go for. And math literacy is not even acceptable in the banking sector and in other areas. So, but because of the various problems that we have had in the system of education, people run away from education, believing that science and maths are difficult subjects. But in my view, mathematics is actually the simplest subject. If we look at it, when we started as kindergarten, we were taught mathematics to add, subtract, divide, and multiply with objects, stones, and we understood what we were being taught. But the moment you advance further, they take away that aspect of the pragmatic pedagogy in teaching people. And when it is taken away, it becomes a problem for students to understand it. So that's one of the key problems. So by the time we now come up with a legislation, a national legislation that emphasizes on these key areas, it will help us to address the various issues. Secondly, is to look at national legislation, which recreates compulsory inheritable wealth in 21st century automation in South Africa. And what do I mean by that? We mean that there will be compulsory redirection of resources by government in terms of social grants not for consumption now, but social grants that will be invested in shares and other investment portfolios that will be approved by the government. Special tax, and I know these are difficult concepts, but that is the way out. Because some of us believe that it is coming to reality where more people will lose their jobs. We've seen it everywhere. We can do many things without many people being around us. Everything is automated. So special tax regime will be enacted by the government to enable people prepare in advance, because we are not prepared at the moment. Not too long ago, I would not want to mention the name of the person, but a very high government official was saying councillors did not need any knowledge of the knowledge of computer, and it was shocking. That was in 2021 December. And also the third issue that should be considered in recreating compulsory wealth in South Africa is to say there should be a proportion that will be deducted from the 13th check. I know, once again, it's not going to be convenient for many people who will cry against it, but we are not going to talk about a welfare state where some political parties have been talking about redistributing wealth. But when you want to redistribute wealth, there must be a cost or a sacrifice that the people, the labor force, must contribute. It shouldn't be free. Government is not should not be given free amenities to the workforce. Otherwise, the value will not be appreciated, because this is the way out for us. We cannot continue to go into a welfare state. And the third one is about restructuring the economy. How do we restructure the economy? We're already there, that some transactions cannot be made via cash. It must be through an electronic system. So, but we must be legislated in such a way that everybody practices and participates in electronic automation. When this is done, it enables the society to move from the current situation, from the traditional system of the business operation in South Africa, to the level where it should be globally, because an employer cannot still fall behind the automation, using automation to address the business operation in the establishment. So the fourth one, which is the redefinition of labor economics, we have to move away from the traditional system into a constitutionally mixed and collective or co-ownership neo-cyberism economy. Now, one may be asking the question, why make it a statute or a constitutional provision? And I'm saying it because of the very rich constitutional provisions that we have in South Africa, such that supply chain management is also a principle that is entrenched in the constitution. So it shouldn't be a new thing, because we are planning for the future. We should not use a fire brigade approach to deal with all these issues when the time comes. The time is actually now, because we have to plan ahead, though mistakes have been made by not ensuring that adequate planning did not take place before now. So it must be legislated where everybody collectively, compulsorily, and proportionately enables everyone in the labor force to secure a current and future economic life now, according to his or her ownership investment in a corporate entity in South Africa. So the system does not allow anyone right now to stand aloof. We must all participate in the system to avoid welfareism. And the labor economics that we now have, it seeks to understand the functioning and dynamics of the cyber tech dominant market system, moving away from the mixed economy that we all talk about, that we do not have any direction to follow. But when we now have to apply the labor economics, is in a system where we understand the functioning. How does it function? It functions where we have skilled labor in the system that will supply adequate labor that will enable them be relevant and participate in the system. So the old system will say you cannot separate the labor from the laborer, but now that is a thing of the past. The current situation, once an employer employs an employee who configures or programs a software application or develops a hardware device, it replicates itself. And I've been able to say that here in this last slide that says that there are some AI applications now that diagnose, maintain, repair, update other AI devices, thus the exclusion of routine tasks by an employee. So you have one device repairing, diagnosing, maintaining, repairing the other device. And that same one has another device that does the same thing. So on and on and on and on like that, you find that human beings will not be needed to do the normal daily or routine or operation that we are used to. And that is very chaotic for us to combine. So in sum, the new cyberism is all about the four factors that I've mentioned here about legislating on the formulation and implementation of a dual system of education. Second one is about recreating wealth, which I've just mentioned. Third one is about restructuring the economy to understand that the economy cannot survive without being in the automated system. Otherwise, we'll be losing out. And these are the four key areas. And in conclusion, not to take much of the time, is to say that automation has become part of human anatomy. There's nothing we can do about it. Our cell phones are now, is a mini computer that we have all the information, banking, insurance, wills, everything of our life, we do it on our cell phone. Therefore, it has become part of our lives. And the more we live, the more we are going to witness the automation of business operation in the world, including South Africa. So thereby making employees irrelevant, redundant, and at the end of the day, some may lose their jobs. What do we need to do is to reorientate our minds to be futuristic in our approach towards everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was very insightful cover of the topic. I'm just going to check whether we have any questions online before turning to our audience here. No, we don't have any questions online. Any questions here? Yes, we have one question. Just bear with us.
Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation, and I want you because you call at the end for mindset reorientation, and I suppose you hope the government move forward the subject and have this type of mindset reorientation about tech and employers, I suppose. Or
yes.
Okay,
Yes, that's
so,
my point. Yes.
So here's my question. Do you think the top-down and state-driven changing is the best way, or you think it's best if it starts with the employers and at the company level? I explain why I ask you that, because in Europe, we choose at the European Union level to pass a bill, the Green Deal Pact. It's 3 or 4 laws, but it's a Green Deal. And on the Green Deal, they ask for any state to give money for a fund, a transition industrial fund, to help industries who will lost many of the jobs because of robotics and new technology. So it's a top-down solution, and it's helping with funding corporate and private sector. Do you think it's a good way to embrace this type of changement?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think it should be a top-down solution, because the policymakers give direction on whatever happens in the society. They drive the economy. In South Africa, in 2019, December, I am aware that Standard Bank laid off some employees, and when they were laid off, they did not upskill nor reskill them. So if the corporate system could not do that, particularly the banking sector that should know more about automation, if they could not do that, who else would do it? So the ordinary man on the street is also comfortable with his job, is comfortable with working with the old system. But an employer who is now in a competitive world, not just in the country, because whatever services that are provided in South Africa, we are now in a global room. We've been talking about global village. It's no longer global village. It is a global room, as we are right here in the global room. So it is very important for employers to consider how competitive will they be in the economic sector, in the economy, how in terms of competition matters. How will they be able to cope with the quality of service that is rendered, the output that is rendered of whatever services that they render? So in my view, it should still be top down, because employers are part of the policy makers in the stakeholdership. They are not at the bottom. In their own way, according to the business objective, they ensure that they meet the targets, the profits targets, and so many other targets that they may have. So I feel that the top-down solution is still the best, because they give direction. In South Africa, the National Development Plan is there, but it has not been followed. And I do not think the government is ready to do that. In most cases, you find a change of government. Look at the local governments in Tuari, the capital city of the of the country. Even in Johannesburg, we have been having such problems. So we've had some cases where there are specialized schools now that are now embarking on robotics, but have they laid the foundation in the area of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics? So for me, an ordinary person just wants to live by the day, but the government should show leadership. Unfortunately, we don't have that leadership. So finally, top-down solution should be the way out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? No. No. Thank you very much, Dr. Oluwole. Thank you for your. It was
Thank you,
really
Chief.
insightful. And please do not forget to send us your slides.
I will send it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.